How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Infinite Sports. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, once again joined by my good friend, Don Matassa. Last episode we did together, we covered the NFC. We did an NFC State of the Union, kind of went over the offseason for each teams and how we kind of see how the divisions are going to play out, how we rank each team in each division. So today we're going to be covering the AFC. Before I get into that, Dami, how we doing today?
What's up? We're back for part two. Last one, short for us, an hour and a half. So get ready to buckle in because we got everything going down.
That's right. Yeah. So we actually did record a couple of episodes for his podcast, Sloppy Saturdays, and they were a lot less than they basically equaled our episode on Infinite Sports from a couple days ago, which that's not really true, but because each episode was about 20 minutes long, that was like almost an hour and a half. But anyways, let's kind of dive right into it. So I guess we'll start off with the AFC East. So Dami, although he doesn't like to acknowledge it, he is a Jet fan. So I know he's going to have some things to say about his team, if you want to call it that. But obviously occupied by the Buffalo Bills, who have won this division, have owned this division for years. You got the Miami Dolphins, the Jets, and the Patriots. So with the Bills going into last year, there were some people that were down on the Bills because in the previous offseason they let a lot of veteran players go, on defense, and you also had Stephon Diggs leave as well. So a lot of people talking about, well, who is Josh Allen going to throw to? Who is going to be Josh Allen's number one wide receiver? They went and they drafted Keon Coleman. They got a big year out of Khalil Shakir, and they extended him this offseason. Khalil Shakir, I think, is also an underrated player. James Cook, I'm curious to see what happens with him because, he wants that new contract. But, and if James Cook ends up departing, they end up, cutting ties with him if he goes elsewhere before the season starts. Honestly, I'm not really that worried. I think the Bills will be fine. That's just me. But obviously, you still want to have James Cook in that backfield because he is one of the top running backs in the league. He's turned into that. The Bills did go and beef up this defensive line in the offseason, although a couple of them are going to be suspended. They signed, I think, Michael Hort from the Rams and Larry Ogunjobi from the Steelers. He's also going to be suspended. They brought in Joey Bosa, who is on the older side and does have an injury history, but it's a cheap deal, So, and there's no more Von Miller, of course, but I mean, the Bills had a great year. They just came up short against the Chiefs, like a lot of teams do in the AFC. Really since Patrick Mahomes became the starter for the Chiefs. But yeah, so and of course Josh Allen wins the MVP, well deserved. It came down to him and Lamar Jackson, and they both had really good years. I think you could have gave it to either of them, and you wouldn't really have any complaints. Even though people do complain, so it doesn't really matter. But I still think the Bills, this is their division to lose. You look at the other teams in this division, the Dolphins. Mike McDaniel, I liked him when he first got hired. After that first year, they lose in the first round to the Bills without Tua. I thought, okay, let's see what happens the following year. 2023, that offense was electric. Tua doesn't get hurt. He leads the league in passing yards. And then they play that game in Kansas City. In the playoffs, they end up losing that. And then last year, Tua gets hurt again, and they barely miss out on the playoffs. I think if Tua doesn't get hurt, maybe they do squeak in. But this is kind of a big year, I think, for Mike McDaniel. I think if they don't make the playoffs this year, and if they don't win a playoff game, I think he should be let go, in my opinion. And, we got to see what happens with Tua because Tua has just been dealing with concussions, these last few years. And, he still wants to keep playing, but, a lot of people are saying, like, maybe he shouldn't, but he says he's going to take that risk. And, you kind of have Tyreek Hill getting older. The defense wasn't very good. So, I think the Dolphins, they could fight for a playoff spot, definitely. I think they still have that talent, but, I have my concerns there. I did like what the Patriots did in the offseason. Now you have Mike Vrabel as the head coach. I actually did like that they brought back Josh McDaniels. I think he's really going to help out Drake Maye in his second year. They made improvements on the offensive line, both through the draft and free agency. They added more to that defense. The Patriots' defense is usually good. I think this is a team that's going to win more games than they did last year. And you added Stephon Diggs, and he was making news because of a video that surfaced on social media, so that wasn't a good look. But now Drake Maye does have that number one wide receiver. He is coming off of an ACL injury, and he is an older player, so we'll see what kind of Stephon Diggs we get. But I think compared to what the Patriots have had with that receiving core in years past, I think you do have an upgrade there to an extent. And then with the Jets, it's going to be a lot different than what we saw last year, particularly with the quarterback play. You're not going to have a quarterback that's going to drop back, 40, 50 times and throw. You're going to have more of a run-first team, now with Justin Fields there, and you have the trio of running backs of Breece Hall and Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen. You bring over Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator from the Lions. The Jets' defense, to me, the Jets were a disappointment altogether, but I thought the defense took a step back last year, and obviously it really fell apart once they let go of Robert Saleh. But yeah, the defense was disappointing because this Jets defense the previous season I thought was a strong unit. It's just they the penalties were an issue, but that's always been like that with Jets teams. So I'm curious to see what happens now with the Jets. This new regime, can they get it right this time? With the track record, most people would lean towards no. But, Justin Fields does reunite with Garrett Wilson. They are a little thin at the receiver position, I feel like, outside of Garrett Wilson, too. But, I think Justin Fields is probably the next best option, moving off of Aaron Rodgers. So, I think he could come in and be okay. I thought he played decent with the Steelers before they benched him, for Russell Wilson when he came back. So right now, though, the Bills control this division. I think the Patriots will be improved. If if Tua can stay healthy, I think the Dolphins will win their fair share of games. But I don't think really any of these teams. And then the Jets, for me, there's a lot of unknowns. How is Fields going to do in this new system? How is Aaron Glenn going to be now, being a first-time head coach? So right now, I probably rank the Jets last, and then the Patriots and the Dolphins are kind of fighting, for second and third, and then the Bills are at 1. That's kind of how I see the AFC East as of right now. Dami, what are your thoughts on this division?
Okay, so I'm gonna start in a weird spot. I'm gonna start with the Miami Dolphins. Actually, Miami Dolphins are a team. I said it to you over the course of whatever last week, over an hour. I think Miami Dolphins are going to be a team that just completely falls off. I think Miami Dolphins missed their window. Now, when you look at their window, obviously the offense was explosive, like you said, in 2023. But I don't think they've ever had a championship window. But as for their playoff window being playoff contenders, I think that window has fell off for a couple of reasons. One, when you look at Tua, he's just constantly getting hurt. Also, Tua, like we mentioned in the last episode, if you guys want to go back to that, we were talking about Kyler Murray. Tua is a guy that I kind of put in the same type of sense. Like, he's a good QB, especially for us as New York sports fans. He would be better than a lot of QBs we have had over the years. But is Tua that guy that's going to get you to the next level? We haven't seen it. A guy with a lot of limitations. Obviously, his arm strength isn't the best. In a league that's constantly expanding skill sets, he's not the most mobile guy as well. And with the fair share of injuries, again, how far is Tua going to take you? Pretty high floor, but what's the ceiling looking like? And then you parlay that into Tyreek Hill as well. Tyreek Hill is a guy this offseason that has been rumored to be in trade rumors. He obviously is staying, it seems like. We saw what happened last year. How is that going to impact the locker room? Him saying he wanted out in the last game, that's a big thing as well that I feel like people are forgetting. But not only that, Tyreek Hill looked a little slower last year. He's getting older. A guy like him that prioritizes his skill set on athleticism and speed and being such a vital part of this offense, he's not going to get better with age. And also going into Waddle, a guy that I absolutely loved at Alabama, that his career at Alabama was hindered a little bit by injuries. He's never took that next step as well. Very different from other guys that are talented wide receiver twos in other offense. I don't know if Waddle would be a wide receiver one, really, again, in the NFL, be looked at as that. He never took that next step. When you look at the running backs, again, A-Chain is a guy a lot of people love. I'm not the biggest A-Chain guy, but also, too, that running back room is deep. When you look at Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, Ollie Gordon comes in as a 6th-round pick. Ollie Gordon was a guy that was supposed to be better than Ashton Genty last year. He had a slow season. It's going to be interesting to see if it was that O-line in college or if he fell off. But at a 6th-round pick, you can't really knock the value there. So it's going to be interesting to see. I feel like this team has been getting older and has been, I don't know, they're not as big as a threat to me as they used to be. Again, Tua hasn't really gotten better. Waddle hasn't gotten better. Tua has gotten hurt. Tyreek is getting older. Not only that, it's going to be a very interesting season for Mike McDaniel as well. Mike McDaniel, like you said, came into the league, a guy that a lot of people loved. But now this is going to be a pivotal year. I think if Mike McDaniels and Greer don't get it right this year and this team doesn't make the playoffs, I think both of them are going to be gone, coach and GM. So it's going to be interesting to see. Again, Mike McDaniels took over a very talented offense that when he came, Tyreek Hill was added as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's that offensive mastermind now, or again, now that Tyreek Hill's falling off, now that Tua, again, can't really stay on the field, what's going to happen there? So again, I think the offense is going to fall off. With the Jets, I feel like fell into a very weird place. We discussed it. I discussed it with my Jets fans. I feel like the Jets made the right move this offseason on what they could have acquired when it came to quarterback and head coach. I just feel like they were in like the wrong spot, wrong time, like they always are. There wasn't a lot of options for the QBs. Sam Darnold was a guy that I thought was the best QB on the market. Obviously, they weren't going to reunite with him. And then Fields was that next best option. And for a coach, Aaron Glenn was really the guy with the Jets ties, the guy they could have got. He built a good defense in Detroit. Again, Jets are hiring right after a meltdown 40-point to Jaden Daniels, which is just a typical Jets move. But other than that, I think Aaron Glenn would be a solid coach. But again, I also, as a Jets fan, which is going to receive a lot of flack probably in the comments if people do view this, I was a Jets fan who did like Saleh. And I think Aaron Glenn's going to be very similar to Saleh. It depends on how the offensive coordinator works for them, but he's going to be a good defensive coach, and that defense will be good. What are you going to get out of that offense is the question. You said it, Garrett Wilson in this receiver room. Garrett Wilson, a really good receiver. I don't think he's an elite receiver where he could take over a whole receiving room, and they don't really have much options other than that. And then when you look at the running backs, Breece Hall last year was a little disappointing. Can we get the Breece Hall that we were expecting this year? That's going to be huge. He should have an increase. He should have an increase in stats because now he's playing with a running quarterback. I feel like things should open up in the RPO game. Fields, it's very interesting. I never liked Fields, but then again, I feel like he is the best option that they could have got. When you look at Fields on the Steelers, he had a great start with the Steelers. Again, it wasn't really with production necessarily, but the team got off to a great start. He didn't make any mistakes. I think the Steelers really botched that, in my opinion. It seems like they wanted him back, but when they decided to go with Russell Wilson after the hot start Fields got, why would Fields ever go back there? Fields, again, very similar. Like, I'm a huge Trevor Lawrence fan. We're going to talk about that later, but I think Trevor Lawrence is going to I'm still high on Trevor Lawrence. It depends if you're still high on Fields, if you liked Fields. I was never a person that liked Fields. I think he could be a solid quarterback in the NFL, again, especially as the league's expanding. He's a rushing quarterback. But is he ever going to get the Jets and this mediocre roster to a higher ceiling? I don't think so. So the Jets, I really don't expect to be good. I expect them to be okay, 6 to 8 wins. New England's a team that's very interesting. Now, I've said it to you, and it's very rare because when I like a guy, I really like a guy. But everybody around football, as much as I love Drake Maye, I was a guy who traveled 10 hours to see him play in college. Like, I love Drake. Yep. Of course, he goes to a team in the division as the Jets. Not that I really care. I'm not like the biggest Jets fan. But Drake Maye, a guy that I absolutely love. It seems like everybody's expectations around football are even higher than mine for Drake Maye and New England, which is crazy. People think he may be an elite quarterback as soon as next year. I really like what New England did, like you said. They helped out on the O-line. That's the biggest thing with these guys, these young guys. You want to develop a good offensive line, have them time to throw, allow them to go through their progressions. And Drake Maye, a guy that was under the worst offensive line last year, it's going to be interesting to see how he fares with a solid offensive line. The offensive line should be solid. We'll see. And they invested a huge pick in the draft, that offensive line. But not only that, they were able to get Travion Henderson on offense as well, who's a very good pass blocker to protect him as well, and a great talent. Another guy that we saw play live at Ohio State. I like that pick. Ramondre Stevenson, I expect to still be evolved again. Like, they just signed him to a pretty solid contract last year. Stephon Diggs, I really like the move despite the videos or whatever. Even if he's not the same guy, he at least brings a veteran sense to that offense to help Drake Maye grow. We've seen him help quarterbacks grow. He helped Josh Allen grow. Hopefully, Drake Maye with a similar skill set, he helps him grow. So, again, I do expect the Patriots to be second in this division, which a lot of people do, and it is a crazy jump, but I do think Drake Maye is going to have a huge year. And, again, the team did get a little better around him. Then getting into Buffalo, same thing every single year with Buffalo. The team kind of stays the same. Is Buffalo going to get past Kansas City and the Ravens? Are they not? Same thing every year. We've been talking about this for 4 years now. Biggest thing for Buffalo for me, we saw James Cook really take that next step into a star at the running back position. I mean, he looked like a top 5 running back last year. Are they going to be able to keep him? I think they will. But other than that, it's like, who's going to step up in this offense? I do think Diggs helped Josh Allen grow, but last year was the right move moving off of him. Obviously, as Josh Allen wins the MVP, I support Josh Allen getting MVP. I don't think it's all statistics, even though Lamar had better statistics. He had Derrick Henry, had a huge share of that offense. Josh Allen, again, didn't really have that guy in his offense. That's why I thought he was the most valuable player. But I think for this Bills team to, again, get past the Chiefs, not like it really needs anything. They lose every game by one possession, and they just end up on the wrong side. But I think somebody's going to have to break out in the receiving room. Dalton Kincaid is somebody that everybody has been super high on. Is he going to break out? Keon Coleman, another guy selected with pretty nice capital. Is he going to break out? Somebody has to break out in this offense. Maybe Khalil Shakir. That would be great as well. But Joey Bosa takes the spot of Von Miller as the veteran on that defense as well. So, again, I expect the Bills to be number one in this division easily. They have a first-ballot Hall of Fame quarterback that could go down as one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. And when you look at the other people in this division, they have major question marks. If I would have to rank, I don't know. I forgot what you ranked it, but it would be Buffalo, New England, Miami, Jets for me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have. I did say it's kind of a toss-up between the Dolphins and the Patriots, but yeah, I mean, I really do like what they did this offseason. And also, like I said, getting Mike Vrabel now as the head coach, I think that's really going to pay dividends for them.